Hello and welcome to this CNBC Africa special. I'm Chris Bishop. With me I've got Robert McBride, a former underground activist, a man who's spent a lot of his life corruption busting. He's just brought out a new book, The Struggle Continues, and we're going to spend the next half an hour unpacking some of his very colourful life. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks, Chris.
And as you say, the struggle continues. That's the theme of your book. How don't you think people in this country can be complacent about the freedoms that we have here?
I think it's most people would like to get on with their lives, and a lot of people tell you they don't want to be involved in politics, and what they mean is in deciding their futures, but they don't see it that way. They just want to get ahead with their lives, get the kids through school, university. So in a sense, the civic responsibility and duty is kind of reduced. And that is normal, and because South Africa normalized very quickly with one of the best constitutions in the world, and we've established and built this constitutional democracy and its institutions. And things are relatively okay. The result is the active citizenry, to a large extent, dropped their guard. Of course, there were many within the active citizenry with the NGO movement who were still vigilant and basically saved the day when the state capture was at its height and attacks against institutions of democracy were increasing and were quite crude and direct. And it was indeed in the South African circumstances, the NGOs that saved the day, taking people to court, all the way up to constitutional court, to ensure that there's respect for the rule of law.
Don't you think there's a danger that this idealism you're talking about, that was the birth of this country, is in danger of being subsumed by the somewhat desperate times that we're facing here, especially economically? To a large extent, it's compromises that were made earlier about certain things, including law enforcement and the lackadaisical way we went about things. Of course, with good intention, with being quite complacent that our democracy is working, has resulted in impunity. So, which persists to this day, and it has emboldened those who do not share our ideals, and those who are basically careerists. I think former President Mbeki once referred to them as political careerists. So where they saw, for example, the ruling party as a place to make a buck, not a place to contribute. And in fact, for a long time, a period of about 10 years, those who were idealistic, who wanted to improve the lot of the majority, who were seen as fools. Those who were not grabbing and looting were seen as stupid. And the real fashionable people were the people exhibiting the conspicuous consumption. And it's no more like that now. It's the shoe is on the other foot here. How convinced are you of the new direction that President Cyril Ramaphosa has promised this country? I mean, a lot of people are still saying, well, we're still not seeing prosecutions. We've had the State Capture Commission, but where are people being brought to book?
Well, the big problem is that the institutions of democracy, including the NPA, were hollowed out and weakened, and the ethical fiber was reduced. The result was there were many cases where there was an absence of evidence and yet prosecutions went ahead. And on the other side of the coin, there were instances where there was overwhelming evidence, but no prosecutions were initiated. So I think the new leadership at the NPA is have that in the back of their minds, and they want to ensure that they have proper cases that can be proved in court. And that is correct. But the negative side of that is that they're looking at perfect cases.
So they're a bit hesitant to bring a case to court that in their minds is not perfect. And yet in law, there is no perfect case. Even the case with all the evidence still gets challenged in court. So the kind of reticence to move with vigor and tenacity of purpose needs to be implemented. So the obsession with perfect cases is what's holding us back. So on the one hand can be a good thing, on the other hand it emboldens the thieves and looters and gives them the impression that nothing will happen. And that is why some people are even talking about amnesty as a way out. Any amnesty will just fit into the notion of justice for the rich. So the guy that shoplifts something goes to jail, but the guy that shoplifts a chain of stores, you know, he gets free.
But people are still saying, well, yeah, be that as it may, but it's still long overdue. And you say people are getting emboldened by the fact there is no wide-scale prosecutions.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, we've seen the recent killing of policemen and an IPID investigator recently. We don't know who are the perpetrators, but my gut feeling tells me it's to terrorize and to intimidate further witnesses. But of course, we should start seeing prosecutions now. There's enough evidence in a number of cases already available from the Zondo Commission. And the key issue is purely from strategic point of view, some cases you can deal with immediately, and you should launch those cases. Others require a bit more work and a kind of build-up. And of course, the people being brought to book are going to fight tooth and nail not to get to court. That's what they're doing. And the irony is they'll be using the ill-gotten gains to fight their appearance in court. Yeah.
There's still a school of thought that say that the president's paralyzed, there's opposition within his own party, and that's the reason why things aren't happening.
Well, remember, in the issues are a kind of knife edge issue at a certain time, and the president should take all people along with him, and you have different voices singing from different pages, and sometimes the songs they're singing cancel each other out or are against each other. And the more the president sings about doing the right thing, others will want to derail that because they have an interest in not going to prison or not being held to account. So the result is, from a strategic perspective, the president can't make a false move that will result in a gathering of momentum against him. And I think thus far he's been able to do that quite well, to manage that, because the issues are not linear. It's quite a complex matrix or matrices of what is going on, and different interests. And the different interests sometimes staring the possibility of prison in the face form alliances of convenience. And doing the right thing is very often a lonely place. And sometimes you have to go by your instinct. And leading a country, a complex, modern country like ours, is not easy. And with the complex problems we have, the inequality, the unemployment, and the different sectors with different interests, not given an inch on anything. And what has brought us all together, funny enough, is the coronavirus. So South Africa is pulling together in a really good way, where even opposition parties are supporting the stand taken by government and the measures taken by government. And that shows what is possible and what can be achieved. So I think even with on a lighter side, the panic buying might see the demand for goods going up and the economy having a bit of a spike in the next few weeks. Yeah.
But just getting back to your book and your own life, you grew up in Wentworth, just outside Durban, in KwaZulu-Natal.
Yeah.
Now, it seemed to me from reading the book, it was in many ways a grim place to grow up with. How much of that made you who you are, you think?
I think a significant amount of environment plays a part in your formative years, in how you develop, how you think. But a lot depends on your parents, your community, your school, your church, in instilling particular values in you. And so there were many influences on me, but you could not grow up in my environment and not have some measure of steel in you. The biggest sin in our community, in terms of the set of norms, was to run away. That was and the biggest insult was we made you run. So the result was you'd have to stand and fight. And I think every community develops its own subculture, its own norms, its own values, and what it places emphasis on. With us, it was being brave and standing up, and in a situation where we were kind of left on our own to a large extent. Our parents were working. We were on our own and had to look after ourselves till the parents came home. You learn to defend yourself, your family, and those that are weaker than you. And that instills immediately in you a sense of wanting to protect. And that very easy translate into, well, fighting against oppression. So it's not a big jump to reach there. And we were also fortunate we lived, our township was a township that housed the only black university for medical, the one of two. There was Medunsa, and there was what we called the University of Natal Black Section. And the residence that was there was Alan Taylor residence. So a number of luminaries, including some people who are ministers now, attended there as medical doctors. Steve Biko was there also at some stage in a residence. And that community was a very politicized community. It was a hotbed of revolution, of activism. They were very clever in an otherwise conservative environment. They reached out into our community. So the students would give free health services. On weekends, they would have free movies. So the interaction and influence on the community and the youth was great. So those are the influences on growing up. So it wasn't only the violence and poverty and deprivation, it was the other influences too.
And your father, Derek, he was a big influence on you. I mean, I read in the book, you said that people said he was like a Coke bottle. If you shook him up, he exploded.
Yes.
And it seems he was quite a hard man.
Yes.
And you think that his influence saw you into politics?
Yes, it played a role, influential role, and possibly a strong role. But I also had friends who had more in common with my father and spent longer times talking to my father than with me. Whereas I was interested in going outside and playing soccer or something. They would have long conversations, and sometimes I'd get interested in a lot of the phrases and concepts were strange to me, but I'd listen and be influenced. And then one of the things that affected me is one of my friends being detained at some stage. And he was my friend. We would go to karate together, we'd play rugby together, and he got detained. And that had an influence on me also. So it was a cumulative effect of a lot of influences. But certainly the conditions in which we found ourselves in as second-class citizens, as being oppressed, growing up in impoverished environment, all had an influence and a political awakening in a very structured form coming from the university students. And we're talking about early days, pre-teen days already.
One of the amazing accounts in your book is you're surely one of the few people on earth who's shot his way out of a hospital in the company of your father. You were rescuing your childhood friend Gordon Webster.
Yeah.
And you were dressed as a priest and a doctor.
Yep.
With firearms under that. Just give us a taste of that moment as you came out of the hospital.
Well, Gordon was the commander of the unities. Gordon recruited me and trained me and took me out of the country. And he was really someone I looked up to. And then we were instructed to split the units, form another unit. And during that period, he was captured. And it was, for us, our view was perhaps in an extreme way that do we accept his imprisonment or do we reject it? And what can we still do? He's still in hospital. We have a network of doctors and nurses coming from the same University of Natal Black section. And we had a network of intelligence of medical staff. So we utilized it to find out the status in where is he kept, what's the type of security involved. And then we decided, well, we will request approval for the operation because it had never been attempted before. And after a lot of interrogation from the commanders in Botswana, it was decided to go ahead. And when they were happy that we could pull it off and that they said, all right, do it. And from the go-ahead, it was probably 5 days till actual execution of operation, which involved overcoming the policemen and taking our commander out of the country.
And were either of you wounded in that?
No, none of us were wounded. But there were people injured, and one person died during the crossfire in a shootout with the police.
Oh, incredible. So, another story which you write in there is that you're one of the few people who met your biographer on death row.
Yeah, that's right.
He came in as a journalist to interview you, but also you got married on death row to your wife, Paula.
Right.
Who, it must have been odd having a courtship and a romance in a high security prison.
Yeah, well, what prison does for you and lack of physical contact, it improves your ability to communicate and to sense and to feel the other person. And so it becomes quite acute, your ability to sense what people are feeling. And after a while of her visiting me, I then said to her, isn't it time that you write love letters to me now? And the response was, well, you might regret it later on. and that's, I think also it's audacity, cheek, chutzpah, to say, well, I'm on death row, but I will still maintain my humanity and try as much as possible to do what is human and natural and not be overcome by the circumstances, And in a sense, that has really shaped my life, that attitude.
And some of the brutality still, we're talking, 30 years ago? It's yesterday in human terms. Yeah. In your book you say that Paula, your wife, she was helping an illiterate lady read the execution notice for her husband.
Yes.
And one of the warders snatched it out of her hand and said, don't worry, Paula, you're going to get yours soon.
Yeah.
It's incredible. But you're telling me that to this day you still talk to some of these warders who were there.
It's very funny. The guy that did it was a black guy, and sometimes some of the people behind bars can show extreme cruelty, but others can show really good humanity. And you can't really generalize, and you can't really generalize black or white. It was a black guy that did that, and other black guys were okay. For example, one guy, I didn't shave much. I didn't have much facial hair, being young at that time, but he would take me every day out of my cell to shave. just so that I'm out of the solitary confinement. And sometimes he'll take me out twice a day. I'll be pretending to shave, but be listening to the banter in the bathroom and being able to smuggle and send messages. And he was a senior guy, so that little bit of humanity. And at some stage I asked, can I clean the floors? Because being out there, you keep fit, you're scrubbing the floors, you're polishing them, but you're also talking to your comrades, your fellow inmates. You're also helping smuggle letters, notes and things under doors, so you can move and you keep fit. Of course, some of my other comrades thought, well, as political prisoners, we shouldn't work, but and they were a bit angry with me for a while until they needed something, then I could only smuggle it in.
But you said the other day, a couple of your ex-warders or jailers, they called you on a WhatsApp call.
They
FaceTime.
And said, we're having a drink, and you, would you like to join us? Yeah. Unfortunately, I was not available, but it's because I was busy elsewhere, but otherwise I would have joined them. Yeah.
I'll tell you, well, another story, so when I first met your wife, Paula, I want to ask you about 1997, Maputo. You were inside Mashava's maximum security trying to get out.
Yeah.
We as journalists were on the outside trying to get in to talk to you.
Yeah.
Now, you said in your book that this was a mission to find out who was smuggling cheap guns into South Africa from Mozambique. These cash and transit heists. Now, you said you did this off the books. So you got no authorization at all. You went in there. And then you believe it was people here who actually betrayed you.
Well, if you remember the Meiring report, for me what it was, it's people of the old order settling scores. So they included the former head of the Defense Force, General Sipiwe Nyanda, myself, General Holomisa, Mama Winnie Mandela, and the great financier was Michael Jackson and Quincy Jones for this great new movement called Mkapla. And that was the scheme that they had. So whilst there was a genuine bona fide operation going on, they decided to do a double think and use the investigation to have a go at us. And fortunately, Mandela had the depth and foresight to call all his generals together and ask them a question one day. Well, guys, I believe you want to overthrow me.
And that was the end of it.
That was the end of it, yeah.
No, but your time, you spent 6 months in prison in Maputo, in Mozambique. And it was quite a harrowing time. I mean, they did a lot of things to you, including like mock executions. Yeah, well, it's a funny thing because I remember one of the nights after interrogation, I think perhaps frustrated by my stubbornness and my refusal to be manipulated, they took me outside and put me against the wall, and there were about 7 guys of an organization called Intervention Rapide, Rapid Intervention Unit of the Police, and made me stand against the wall. I faced the other way, and then they cocked their guns. And I remember the moon was shining above them, but there's a nice breeze coming from the sea. And I thought to myself, well, it's actually a nice evening to die. So I was not intimidated at all. But, I mean, it was done a few times, yeah. And they asked you for bribes and to free you, all this stuff.
Of course, I responded with the necessary rudeness and arrogance at that suggestion, yeah.
And how did you get out in the end? And what was it like when you came back here?
Well, what we did is we went to the Tribunal Supreme, the High Court and then applied for an end to my detention. It was 6 months without trial, and the judge then said my detention's illegal, and it's an abuse of my human rights, and I should be released immediately. And that's how I was released.
It must have really been quite a stiff lesson after all the years you spent on death row. that you could still be thrown incarcerated in peacetime, as it were.
Yeah, I've no regrets. I exposed the senior officials who were raiding the stores of Mozambican state and making it available to criminals. So that was fine. And then there was suddenly a lot of excitement then about, doing joint operations and so on. Whereas the operations until then had not stopped the cash in transit heist or the use of firearms in the country. And so no regrets on that. And it did. So a lot of people won't like my methods sometimes, but my cause they will associate themselves with.
Any regrets about the path you've chosen for yourself? You're still involved in government. You're still on the corruption busting hunt. In this current day and age, you're going to make yourself very, very unpopular indeed with a lot of people. What's your view? What sort of legacies do you want to leave?
No, I'm really not interested in a legacy. I'm interested in what I do now on Earth, and less interested in a legacy. So I'm interested in how we deal with the challenges facing our country at the moment. And serious one is corruption. And so I'm involved in the reference group that's looking at the National Anti-Corruption Strategy, which we must finish by the middle of the year and hand over to the president. So I've no regrets on the part. The part against apartheid is the same part against corruption. It's a greed and looting to benefit a few people at the expense of the many. So it's the same thing. So no regrets. I'll keep doing it. I'll just do it with the greater intensity now.
So lastly, very briefly, you're going to make noise while you're still up, as long as you can walk and talk, as they say. That's what you plan to do.
Yeah, it's a priority for government. It's a priority. All political parties have indicated that fighting against corruption is a priority for them. So therefore, I have the backing of the people. Theft and looting really minimizes or reduces the opportunity to close the inequality gap, to improve the lives of people, to move people out of poverty, because our fiscus then shrinks because because of wastage, we have to be bailing out our SOEs, which really hinders our ability to provide service and uplift our people. So I have to carry on. Yeah.
Best of luck with that indeed. That's Robert McBride, former underground activist in South Africa and current corruption buster. He's got a new book out, Robert McBride, The Struggle Continues. It's on the shelves at the moment. That's all we've got time for on this CNBC Africa special. From me, Chris Bishop, it's goodbye.